Hi everyone, I'm just going to go through the PDF tutorial for our vector landscape demo, and I am going to try to follow it as closely as possible so we can make sure that you understand the instructions. So let's start off with step number 1, create a new document. Remember, I always suggest that you have your workspace on one side and your instructions on another. So it's telling us to go to File, New. Here's my window. Now, I have worked in Illustrator a lot, so I have a lot of suggestions here. You might have a blank space under Recent, so you can go to the Art and Illustration tab, and it'll bring up your preset details. And now we can set it to inches. We want to match this picture right here. Always zoom in if you need to see the details. So 8.5 by 11. We want tall, one artboard, advanced options, RGB color, high resolution, and we're good, and we click create. Now let's zoom this out. Here we go. Step 2 is to bring in the reference images. So I'm going to go to Finder. My reference images, yours will likely be under your downloads. Mine I've moved into this file. I'm going to select them, click and drag, and there they are. They're quite large, so I'm just going to take a moment to hold Shift, resize the whole group, click off of them, and now I'm able to move them individually. Just gonna space them out. There we go. Good. Next step, arrange them neatly around the artboard, create a new layer in your layers panel and label it references. So let's go to layers, new layer. Well actually, you know what? I'll just name layer 1 references, and then it says lock that layer. Boop, locked. Step 3, creating your background. Select the rectangle tool and draw a shape that covers the artboard. So my rectangle tool is right here. Now if I was to try to draw right now, notice that it's saying that I can't do anything. It's because my locked layer is currently selected. So my new layer, I will select that, and now I'm able to draw. So I'm going to click and drag from one corner to the other. I have my smart guides on, so it's making it easy to snap to the corners. If you want to see if your smart guides are on, follow these instructions here. Go to, make sure you're in Illustrator. Go to View, and then make sure that Smart Guides is checked off. Now that we've made a rectangle, we need to make it match these settings down here. It needs to have a gradient and no stroke. So we can tell that the shape is currently selected because of the boundary box. We want no stroke up here in the control bar. And the fill, there's this gradient option right here. Next step, with the rectangle selected, use the control bar. Oh, we did that. Now we use the gradient panel to set the angle to 90 degrees. So right now it's 0 degrees because the gradient is going directly from side to side. So we need to find our gradient panel. If you can't see your gradient panel in here, remember you go to Window and you find Gradient. Here's where we change the angle, 90 degrees, hit enter, and now it's going from lightest to darkest. Perfect. Alright, page 1 done. Step number 4, begin your mountain range. We create a new layer. So again, layers panel, new layer. I'm going to take a moment to rename layer 2 background. And now I'm going to name this one mountains, the new one. Match your stroke and fill settings to the example provided. Now, if I were to change my stroke settings right now, it's going to affect the rectangle because that's what was still selected. So I'm going to hit Command Z. So prior to changing our settings, you just want to make sure that you deselect it, and I can do that just by clicking on the layer above. Now I can actively change things. My fill is in front, I can hit none, and my stroke, you can have it set to black. I actually think that I might like to have a brighter color while I'm tracing. Alright, that's good. Now it says select the pen tool and strategically click, oh I'm sorry, I skipped a part. Match your stroke and fill settings. Make sure your drawing mode is set to draw behind. So if we go to the toolbar over here, we can see the options here. We're on draw normal, now we want draw behind. Alright. So now, select the pen tool and strategically click and drag points to trace the nearest row of mountains on the reference image. Once the shape has been completed, change the fill to a dark gray with no stroke. I'm just going to expand this for a moment. Whoop, not that one. I'll expand this for a moment. Alright, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to use my pen tool. Shortcut is P. The letter P, no combination of any keys. And now I'm just going to click and drag all along the mountain range. Remember, you can fast forward to whatever part you need. Just strategically clicking and dragging to get some curves. I'm not being overly detailed, just trying to get some general shapes that I probably wouldn't have been able to think of on my own. It's nice to have a template to kind of guide us based off of something that actually exists. There we go, and always make sure you close the shape, so you're going to wrap this all the way around the bottom. Good, and now I can flip this, turns the whole thing purple, but I'm going to double click the fill, and I'm just going to choose a dark gray, and we're good. Now let's do the next row, and now because I have draw behind selected, when I start to trace, you can see, just go over to layers panel for a moment. Here it is. If I open up my mountains layer by clicking on the little arrow, we can see that what I'm now drawing was sent underneath my previous mountain, and that's exactly what we wanted. Alright, just clicking and dragging to make slight curves. I don't like tracing when my fill is on, so I'm just going to flip these. Just clicking and dragging all the way across. Just kind of following the shapes, generally speaking. Alright, I'm going to speed this up just a bit. Alright, when you get to the end, make sure again you can zoom out while you're using the pen tool as well. You're going to click all the way around, go back to the beginning. And now what I like to do is I like to use my eyedropper to select the gray from the first mountain, and now I double click on the fill, and now I can choose a lighter gray. There we go. And our third and final hill, I'm actually going to do this far away to help me move faster. Make sure you're clicking and dragging. Again, I'm going to set my fill to none. You can do this even while you're operating. You can just go over here and click. Got kind of this peak here. And we come down here. And because everything is behind it, we can go right down there. And I want to make sure I got over the edge. Again, we'll use the eyedropper to select the color from the previous mountain. Double click. Choose a lighter version, and there we go. So we got 3 mountains traced, they all went behind each other. Remember that once you close the shape, you can use the direct selection tool to adjust points, click the anchor part or part of the path that you want to change, and then click and drag accordingly. So let's say that I didn't like, I don't know, this. I don't like this right here, actually, this weird little loopy doopy thing. So I've selected the shape. Now I can use my direct selection tool, and you can click on the anchor, and once you've clicked it, you can now move it accordingly. You can change the handles to make things a bit more natural. You can also click on line segments as well. If you don't like a certain part of it, you can click and drag to make it different. So remember that there's never really a need to redraw a shape. You can always change things. So if you have one harsh corner that went way off base, like this one's kind of weird, you can click, bring it down a bit, you can always change things. Okay, so remember that's your direct selection tool, your white arrow. Step 5, use the selection tool, that's the black arrow, and hold shift to select all 3 mountain shapes. Then drag them to your artboard, resize and reposition accordingly so that they occupy approximately the bottom half of the artboard. And again, make sure that your lightest mountain is the farthest one, with the closer ones getting progressively darker. So I'm going to go over here, use my selection tool, select 1, 2, 3. Remember, you're holding shift to select multiple pieces. Now I can click and drag, bring them over here. I can hold shift and alt to size them from the center and maintain proportions. And I'm going to lift them a bit because it's said to occupy the top half. And then I'm just going to full out drag this point down because they're mountains. We don't really need to keep proportions necessarily. Good. All right, that's about the bottom half. Now what I am noticing is... Oh no, we're good. Yep, they have no stroke. We are all good. Okay. So the next step, creating a tree line. This is pretty fun in terms of being able to find a quick little trick for yourself. So we are going to be adding a whole bunch of trees at the bottom, but rather than drawing them individually, we have a little shortcut, if you will. So the first step is to create a new layer and name it trees. Go to layers, new layer. Now we do have our stuff set on draw behind, so that's why the layer went underneath. You just need to click and drag it to the top. Close our layers, double click, trees. Now it says use the pen tool to trace the reference image of the tree. Remember that tracing is easiest when your fill is set to none. So I'm going to zoom in here and I'm going to do a very quick version of tracing the tree. I encourage you to take your time. I'm going to set my fill to none and my stroke can be gray for now, that's fine. So we are going to click and drag, and if the pen tool is not going in the direction that you need, remember that you always click off the point and it puts it back to a straight line. So I can make the curve, click and drag, do that. Alright, so I just wanted to show you how to do that to make the nice curves, but in the interest of time, I am only going to use straight lines. That way you don't get too bored watching this part of the video. But believe me, the effect is so much better if you actually trace the organic shapes for your own projects. Here we go, almost there. Alright, flip that around. And now we want darker trees, so I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to select this dark hill. Now I'm going to double click the fill and I'm going to make them even darker. Good. Now I'll use my selection tool, shortcut V, to grab the tree, bring it over here. Now once the shape has been made, change the fill to a dark gray, similar to the example you see on the left. Did that. Duplicate the tree by holding Alt while you're using your selection tool to click and drag. Duplicate and arrange a cluster of 5 trees, vary in height and size. Okay. So just so I'm not messing with anything, I'm going to lock the layers that I'm not working on right now just to make things easier for me. So I have my selection tool. I have the Alt key held down right now. We see the double arrow on my mouse. I'm going to click and drag out. So I have 5 trees. And right now they're all the same size and that's pretty boring. So I'm going to stretch one, make it skinny. Maybe I'll make a wider one. And then I'm going to just play around with the kind of height of all of them, how much space they occupy. That's not bad. So now I'm going to select all 5. And now just like in Photoshop, I'm going to hit Command G. And actually let me open my layers panel for this. So we see we have 5 things here. I'm going to hit Command G. They've all been put into one group, which means that if I click off and now I click one of the trees, they're all together. So now I can hold Alt and I can duplicate the whole group. And now I got a much nicer tree line here. Now the pattern's pretty consistent, so you can choose a group, right click, transform, reflect. Kind of make it a little bit different. You can stretch them out. You can place some taller, lower, all that kind of stuff, but make sure you don't have any gray of the tree showing. Sorry, gray of the mountains showing in between. So it should be pretty solid gray of the trees all along here. That's pretty good and randomized. Looks pretty natural. Good. Alright, now to add the silhouette. So we are now going to be adding the cliff with the fox. Create a new layer in your layers panel and name it silhouette. So we'll go to our layers panel, close the trees, lock them if we want. That's not necessary, by the way. I just prefer it so I don't accidentally mess with any of my layers. New layer, silhouette. Remember we need to click and drag it so it's on top because we need it to be in front of everything else. Use the pen tool to trace the fox silhouette reference image. Once the shape has been made, set the fill to black. So here I go. Over here again, I'm going to do this far more sloppy than you should. Remember, click off to be able to set your pen tool to straight again. If it's curving in a way that you don't like, click off the anchor, and then you have free range again. Again, I don't like tracing with a fill, so I'm going to set it to none. And just very broadly here, going to trace around. Again, fast forward to whatever part you guys need. I'm just going to get the basic shape here. Clicking off, wrap around this nice curve of the tail. Again, the pen tool is doing something I don't like, so I'm going to click off the anchor, do it on my own. Oh, 4 legs here. This will take a moment. Clicking off the anchor really does come in handy. I don't want you guys just doing straight lines. That's not going to give you the type of detailed subject matter that you want. Almost there. Almost there. Alrighty. Beauty. Alright, what did I say? Set it to black. So I'll double click, set it to black. Good. Alright. Now it says select the pen tool and randomly click and drag points to create the basic shape of a cliff for the fox to stand on. So we got kind of this out jut of a rock here. So I have my pen tool and I'm just going to randomly click and drag. Get some kind of a cliff thing going on, kind of an overhang out jut. Wrap around. I don't like how this curve is kind of there, so I'm going to use my direct selection tool to click on the anchor and just give it a bit more of a reasonable shape. There we go, kind of jagged rock face, good. Now I can use my selection tool to click and drag the fox. Make sure that it makes sense with where the feet are. You don't want it to be like hanging over the edge or anything. Fox and the cliff should be the same color. There we go. Alright, now for the fun part. We've done now our black and white version. We have the gradients all, or rather the values all going in the right direction, starting with darkest, going to lightest. Same with the sky, starts light at the bottom, dark at the top. Now here's where our color swatch comes into play. We're going to create a custom color swatch, and we're going to do this in our swatches panel. So I see it here, swatches panel. Remember, if you can't see it, go to window, check it off. We're going to make a new color swatch by creating a new group. Don't need a name. Now we're going to use our eyedropper tool, shortcut I, and you are going to select the darkest color. It's going to show up here in the fill area. You're going to click and drag it down till the blue line is in your new file. There you go. Sample the next color. Click and drag. There we go. Next color. So on and so forth till you have 5 brand new colors in your swatch. Good. Alright, now we are going to actually add color to the whole thing. Here we go. Select the background rectangle and open your gradient panel. So we're going to go to layers, background. Remember it's locked, so we need to unlock it if we want to edit. Use your selection tool to select it. Set the fill to a linear gradient and set the angle to 90 degrees. Let's go to the gradient panel. It's already linear as we can see here. 90 degrees, done. Add a series of handles to the gradient bar by hovering just below it, pardon me, until you see a plus symbol by your mouse. Carefully move the RGB sliders to replicate the image above. Okay, here we go. So we are going to, we have 2 gradient sliders right now, 1 and 2. We need 5, so we're going to add 3. So we see my mouse with the plus sign. Good. Now here's what we are going to do. You are going to double click on a slider, and we are going to go to the swatches, and we're going to choose the lightest color. Double click on the next slider, choose this next darkest color. Double click on the next slider, next darkest color. Next slider, next darkest color, so on and so forth. Good. All right, now if we take a look at the example, right now we can't see much of the lighter colors because they are behind the mountains, so try to match your slider to what you see here. So this dark part just comes off a little bit. Slide that slider in. Slide this one over here. Bring this one up. And this one right about there. Alright, there we go, much better. Now we're going to do the same for the 4 landscape layers, okay? So the tree line colors, got to go back and unlock trees. We are going to click on the trees, but there is something that I neglected to say, I believe, in the demo on the PDF, so it's a good thing I'm doing this video. Okay, gonna select the entire layer here, okay? Now let me show you what will happen if we try to put a gradient on it right now, okay? I'm gonna go to gradient, click on my trees rather. Oh, hold on. Go to layers, selected my trees. Go to the gradient panel. Let's say I want to add the gradient. Gotta change this to 90 degrees. Okay, so let me just click off for a second. So right now, despite the fact that the trees are grouped, they're being understood as still having separate pieces, and we don't want that. So we're going to go to layers. We're going to select the trees. Now we're going to go to Window, Pathfinder. This helps us decide the relationship between multiple shapes, how they interact with each other, and you want to choose this mode, which is called Unite, and it's going to make it into one big shape. Here we go. There we go, that's what we want. Now, we just need to change the colors. So the tree line colors are going to be the 2 darkest colors. So you can click on the lighter sliders and hit the trash can. Anytime you see there's white highlighted on it, that is the one that will be affected when you hit the trash can. There we go. You want to drag the sliders out so that you can see the clear transition within the shape. Good. Now for the first row of mountains, so let's unlock the mountains now. Click the mountain, click the mountain, go to gradient. We don't want this. Instead now what we want is again a 90-degree gradient. According to this slider, we are keeping this color, but now we're also getting a slightly lighter color, but the lighter color is always going to go on the left. So there we go. Spread them out a bit. Remember, you want to be able to see the transition between the colors. Again, gradient. We're going to keep this lighter color, change the darker color to an even lighter color. Oh, no, this one. There we go. And take a look, it's going sideways, so we need to change this to 90 degrees. Again, make sure that you can actually see the transition here. My Pathfinder window is just in the way. Get out of here. Alright, so I'm going to move this a bit. There we go. And remember, you can always move your stuff while you're working. So this is really close to each other, so I'm just going to raise it so that my my shape has more room to breathe so we can see the gradient. And let's bring this part down a bit more. Good. Alright, that's better. This one here, gradient, we're keeping this light color, and we're changing this dark one to the lightest. Go to 90 degrees. Again, spread that out so that we can see the transition happening. All right, very good. Awesome. Okay. Now, we never want to have the silhouette be solid black. It doesn't match our color palette. So what we're going to do is select the fox and the silhouette. And we're going to double click on the fill. You can go to swatches from here. You can see your swatches are down below. Choose the darkest color, click OK. But then I want you to double click on the fill and take the color even darker. There we go. We want the darkest version of that color. Awesome. Now I'm just going to lower everything a little bit, I think. Just using my arrow keys right now. Nice, lovely. Okay. Next step is to create a sun. So we're going to go to our ellipse tool, which is underneath the rectangle. I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, hold shift while we make a shape. There we go. Nice big sun. If your sun's not showing up, make sure that it is above the mountains. Mine's actually happening in the mountain layer right now. But I think that I'll actually make a new layer for it so that it's easier to find. I'll name it sun. Open it up. Put the sun on that layer. And it does need to stay behind the mountains, so that's good where it is. Alright, so we're going to give the shape a gradient fill. So it already has a gradient, which is good. But let's go to the panel. Give the shape a gradient fill with warm yellow-orange tones. So we're going to keep this orange, I think. But the one that you need is this color here. So you can highlight it. Hit Command C to copy. C as in Coco. Double click on your darker gradient slider. Go to the palette here. And right here is where color codes can go. So you're going to highlight that, get rid of it, and paste that number. Hit enter. And there's that gold color we want. Now it says change the gradient type to radial. So up here we got linear, now we got radial. But you want to make sure, take a look over here, the dark part needs to be on the left and the light part needs to be on the right. So these are swapped right now. Just stretch them out. Good, and this little dot here, if you click on it, you can click on it to activate and then click and drag to change where the colors transition. So you can see over here, it's much darker. Over here, the lighter area has more presence. Good. Moving the sun backwards, again, as I said, if you need to, remember that you can always make a new layer and drag it accordingly, but we are actually good right now. Alright, now to create the sun's outer glow. We got the sun, we're going to go to the Effect menu, go to Stylize. Now a lot of people go straight to here. This is not the one we want because it's under Photoshop Effects. We need to go under Illustrator Effects, go to Stylize, Outer Glow. And now here are all the details that we want for the options. Our mode is going to be Color Dodge. The color code, if we double click the color, is going to be this code here, which we can just copy and paste. Click OK. Opacity is going to be 100, and 0.7 inches is what we want. And we are going to click OK. Alright, so it has a really soft, subtle glow around it now, which is wonderful. Now we're going to create the moon. So to do that, we are going to pretty much do what we did for the combining shapes tutorial. You are going to hold shift, make a circle, hold alt with your selection tool on to make another circle. You just want to have them overlapping. Now you're going to select both shapes, go to your shape builder tool, which is right here, and you are going to cut away the parts you don't want by holding alt. There we go, we're left with the crescent moon. We're going to change it to white. Oh, nothing changed because the shape wasn't actually selected. So here we have the options for a solid color, gradient, and none. We want a solid color, we want it to be white, and that's good. Now we're going to add an outer glow. Just going to rotate this a bit. Alright, so we are going to go to Effect, Stylize, Outer Glow. And because the shape is smaller, our blur is going to be smaller as well. We want 0.1 inches. Everything else is the same. Click OK. There we go. We got a nice glow going on here. Now we're going to change the transparency because if you zoom out over here, that's quite intense. So we're going to click on the shape. You have your opacity in the control bar up here. Going to drop it down to, let's say, 50%. There we go. Much more subtle. Now we are going to create a star shape. So we're going to zoom in really close to the sky. Going to draw a circle, holding Shift. Now we're going to go to Effect. We're going to go to Distort. Where is it? Distort. Here we go. Distort and transform under Illustrator Effects, Pucker and Bloat. You're going to drop this down to -60 and hit OK. And you get this star shape here. Now if I zoom out and click off, the star might have appeared small at first, but that's quite big and kind of cartoony right now. So I'm going to zoom in real close. I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to shrink it even more because we want really subtle light stars. Zoom on out. Alright, that's better. Okay. So now I'm going to click on the shape, going to go to my Symbols panel, going to make a new shape, call it Star, hit OK. And now I can get rid of this shape if I want because it's saved here. Step 17, get the Symbol Sprayer tool out, which is this little spray can here. And now I can just click and drag all over and I get a whole bunch of little stars. You can also just click and release. Be careful around the moon. You don't want a star to go on top of the moon. It's not going to look right. So I'm just going to lightly kind of get some around there. And then I'm going to go again, just kind of clicking and dragging. But also keep them more concentrated to the dark part. I'm only going to have a few kind of wandering ones closer to the bottom. But it can be a lot more saturated up top. There we go. Alright, now we're going to use the Symbol Sizer tool, which is if you right-click on the Symbol Sprayer, whoops, cancel. Right-click on Symbol Sprayer, Symbol Sizer. So if you click and hold, you'll find stars get a lot bigger, but I'm going to undo that. If you hold Alt and then click and hold your mouse, it makes them smaller, which I like. I really like the delicate look of the stars. Holding Alt, making them smaller. There we go. That's a nice variety, I'd say. Now for the Symbol Screener tool. Right-click, Symbol Screener. And this just kind of adds variety to lightness and darkness in a group. There we go. And now I'm going to go to my Layers panel. Well, actually, I'm going to stretch this out just a little bit because I want it to reach the edge. Going to go to my Layers panel. I put this underneath, Sun, which is fine. But make sure that you have the symbols area selected because now we're going to drop the opacity. We're going to drop it to 40% and hit Enter. And now the stars are super light and subtle. Oh, it looks so nice, just like dusting. Alright, and now we are going to export. Awesome, okay, so we go to File, Export, Export As, and we are going to match our settings here, okay? So we are going to click Use Artboard. It's going to be a PNG. You're going to name it last name _ landscape demo. Make sure you put it in a file where you know it belongs. So I'm going to put mine on, where's desktop? Desktop is over here. Alright, and now you can go ahead and click export, and make sure you click use artboard because that's going to trim all the edges for you, okay? We go to export. That's a preview of it. We want high quality, and we can click OK. Now if I go to desktop, let's see where it is. There we go. Beautiful work of art, guys. Wonderful work. I hope you're proud of what you've done and that you are excited for your own project. Enjoy.